there's definitely some good things and some things I'm on the fence about with Marten. Like, for example, I'm on a schedule where I'm supposed to start at 9 p.m. Now, when I was on my drive along with Clifford, he told me that they're really good. The schedulers and the planners are really good about scheduling you, and so you can get back in time. I think that might be more true when you start at 3 a.m. as opposed to if you start at 9 or 10 p.m. Because I haven't run into a smooth... I don't know if there's as many drivers that come in at the time that I come in. So I'm not 100% sure if maybe it's because I'm late. I'm one of the newer drivers. If I'm getting less ideal loads, or if I'm picking up on a schedule and the other guys have the places that they're used to going to. And so they have their loads and I'm picking up on a particular schedule and doing certain routes. I don't know. What I do know is that I get into the habit now of sleeping about 6-7 hours. And then I wake up and I go into work. If I get up at like 2 or 3 in the morning, or after 2 or 3 hours, then what I'll end up doing is I'll look at my phone and see what my load's going to be. And my very first load of the week was a good one. When I first looked at it, it was like 349 miles, something like that. I'm like, oh, this is going to be great. Because the load will be ready at 20:58. So that's 2 minutes. The load will be ready 2 minutes before I come in. I'm like, that's going to be great. And then I started looking at everything. And it was like, go to Jasper, Georgia, and then drive to Dalton, Georgia. Not bad, because it's Jasper, Georgia, Dalton, Georgia, Chattanooga, Dalton. The problem I ran into is that the second trip was a neighborhood market, which means you can't drop off before 4 a.m. Sam's Club and Walmart neighborhood markets, you can't drop off before 4 a.m. But because the job was ready at 20:58, you have an hour to get out of there. And if not, it's considered late. I need to be out of there before basically 10. And I'm like, if I got to get the job out by 10, I have 6 hours before I can be at the neighborhood market. So I got out of there before 10. I drove to Jasper, unloaded, wasn't a big deal, drove over to Dalton, and then sat there and had to wait for a while. And then when I got out of there, it wasn't a big deal for me to drive, 20 some odd, 25, 30 miles or whatever it is to Chattanooga. I didn't have to worry about scales or anything because I didn't go over the scales until after I had already done my drop. And the scales, I haven't gone over those scales yet when they've been open. Maybe it's just because I've driven by there early morning and they don't like to open too early. That's fine. But had to wait for that neighborhood market to open. Anyway, by the time I got back, I only had a few hours left. It was like 3 hours left. No biggie. And then that was it for day one. The next day, I went to sleep, and I set my time again for 9 p.m. to come in at 9 p.m. And I woke up and I looked at the job, and it was telling me that the job wasn't going to be ready until like 1 a.m. and then got to be out of there by like 2. And then the first stop was a Sam's Club. And it was only about 60 or so miles away, 65 miles away. So I looked at it and I was like, and so I called up the team and I said, all right, if I come in like 5 hours, I said the job won't be ready until, 1 something. And by the time I get out of there, it'll be almost 2, but it's only an hour drive before I have to be at a Sam's Club. I said, I'd be coming in like 4 hours. I said, is that really the best usage of our resources here in my schedule? And he said, well, can't you just come in later? I said, because I'm scheduled to come in at 9. He says, can't you come in later? I'm like, I can, but it'll screw me up the rest of the week. And he's like, how so? And I said, well, first of all, this is a pick up the job at like, 1 or something and be out of there by 2. It's a drive 65 miles, not a big deal, and arrive at, and the first stop is a Sam's Club. And I was like, it just doesn't seem like, it seems like someone else that comes in later would be a better fit for that. He says, I'll contact the planner. So I go back to bed. Then I get a job. The job that comes through is, it's like a pickup. It's like, it's ready at, I think, 8:58 p.m. and you have an hour to get out of there. And it's a drive like 2 hours. The first stop, and then it's drive about another 45 minutes or so. And the second stop is a Walmart neighborhood market, so you can't be there before 4 a.m. Sam's Club and neighborhood markets, you can't unload before 4 a.m. This did not seem like a good utilization of resources either, because let's just say, let's just call it 9. I get out of there by 10. I drive for 2 hours, and that's me arriving at midnight. And let's just say it's on a slow way. It takes me an hour to unload. Well, because the Walmart's understaffed or whatever. And then it takes me, let's say, an hour to get to the neighborhood market. I'm still sitting around for 2 hours. Anyway, so that's what ended up happening. I ended up getting there. And this night, I just kind of, I knew it wasn't going to be overly fast. So I just kind of took it, very slow until, just did not hustle at all until that stop where I could unload it for. And then from there, I got out of there and rushed back. Now, and actually, I'm not remembering this exactly right. It wasn't a start at 9. I think it was a start at, now that I think about it, I think it was a start at 11 because of what happened after that. And so my first stop was someplace, and then I still got to the neighborhood market by like 45 minutes in advance. That's what it was. I'm not remembering exactly right. And the reason it didn't make sense is because when I left there, it was Sunday morning at this point. It was early in the morning on Sunday. And I got back and I go to turn in the job, and they say, we have you another assignment. I'm like, awesome. And I'm like, give it to me. And they're like, oh, I can't release it to you yet. I'm like, why not? And they said, because you can't drop off before 9 a.m. I'm like, well, it's okay. I still got to couple to the trailer and double check the temperatures and stuff. And it's like, 45 miles away for the first stop. He says, yeah, I can't release it until, since it can't drop off before 9, I can't release it to you before 8:15. I guess their formula is whatever the number of miles is the number of minutes before 9 a.m. they can release it, because that's the way it seemed, like 45 miles and they can't release it before 8:15. And so I had to sit around twiddling my thumbs, and I'm like, you realize that I still have paperwork to do. I still have to couple and pre-trip the trailer. I still have to fill it up, because that's what they want you to do, is fill it up and top it off before you leave. And then from there, I'll be in rush hour traffic. He's like, I understand, but I'm not allowed to release the load early. Anyway, so I got out of there. Here's one of the issues you run into when you leave for a Walmart and it's scheduled to arrive around 9 a.m. First of all, it was closer to 9:30. By the time I got there was another, they have 3 docks on the grocery side. 2 of them had trailers in there. I didn't know if they were full or empty. And one of them was occupied by a Walmart fleet driver. So I had to wait for him to move for about 30 to 45 minutes before I could get in there. By the time I got in there, they unloaded me, and then I went to my second stop. Now, first of all, a thing to note about that first stop, after he was dropping off something. It was a different department. I was dropping off frozen and dairy. So frozen is, dairy is 40 degrees. Frozen is negative 20 degrees in the truck. And it's only it was only 2 stops I had to go to. But it happened to be an area of town and the miles weren't very much. It was like a total of 80 miles, but the miles weren't very much. But the first stop I went to was in the middle of a strongly church focused area. So they have police officers that stop traffic constantly. There's a lot of cars out and about that are just all over the roads, and they love to cut you off more so than most other places in the city. And so by the time I got in there and I was waiting for this truck to clear out of the dock, and I went in there and I was like, all right, we ready to unload here? And they're like, oh, we got to find you a frozen and dairy person. And those people just were dragging their feet. So finally, by the time they found someone from frozen and dairy to come over and unload, they were just taking their sweet time. Got out of there. I rushed to my next place. Luckily, there was nobody there because at this point, I'm in church traffic. And I rushed to my next place, which isn't very far. It's only like 15 minutes. And I get there, and these people have no sense of urgency. They just do not seem to have any cares in the world about getting done on a timely manner. They're paid by the hour. They don't care. So they are just dragging their feet, and they're just like, oh, let me find this guy. This guy was like, yeah, let me clear some space. So he goes and clears some space, and then he comes back and he says, yeah, I got to get something. He had an accent. I couldn't understand him. It was also noisy in there. And so he's like, I got to go get something. I'll be right back. And he disappears for 15 minutes. Finally, when he comes back with a key because he wants to use not the forklift that you push and you manually crank up. He wants to use one of the ones that you put a key into and it kind of automated, pressurizes and lifts. And I understand that. But this guy was just so slow. He was obviously new because he kept crashing the forklift into everything. And he would pull in not with the forks first into the trailer. He would pull in nose first, and then he'd have to position and rotate around. I'm like, geez, every single thing. It was so slow. Then he'd pull it out. And so at this point, I'm asking a few of the other people as they're going by, I'm like, I was like, is there someone supposed to be helping me? And they're like, yeah, we'll find you the guy. But the guy was going very slow. And then when this guy was taking five or 6 minutes to pull out the first pallet, and he was crashing into things and stuff, I find one of these people as they're walking by, who's obviously a manager or something like that. I said, is there someone that could help him? Like once he pulls it off the truck, somebody that could take it into the place? I said, you can say no. And she didn't understand me when I said, you can say no if it doesn't work, but can this happen? Because at this point, because of the wait, because of the just no sense of urgency, because of all the traffic in the area, my hours were depleting quickly. I was supposed to be done by like 1 p.m. and we're pushing in close to noon at this point. By the time we get out of there, it was, well, not noon, it was 11. By the time I got out of there though, it was 11:30, and I rushed as quick as I could getting back. I got back to Marten, and by the time I stopped moving that truck, I had 4 minutes left on my 14-hour clock. Oh, that did not make me happy, because people, when you have to compete with other trucks and you have to deal with traffic and you have to deal with these Walmart people that just do not, that they have other things they have to do, and it's not in the middle of the night where they can stop what they're doing and whatever. They have other things they have to do, and it's a different creature. So anyway, by now, 2 nights in a row, my schedule's been messed up and I'm pushed to start closer to 2 a.m. now. I'm able to pull, based on finishing at 1, I'm able to pull it back to 11. But the job that they gave me was one of those that's not even ready until almost 1. So I'm like, great. So I ended up going in later again. They ended up this night, they built in, I think, a back haul into my trip. So it was do my run around Chattanooga and stuff, and then go back down south to a Heinz, pick up condiments, I guess it is. Anyway, they said it should be that they should be ready for me by, because I said, is this a 24-hour facility or they have hours? And they said, no, it's 24 hours. So anyway, I pull up there, the sun's still down because I made good time. And I pull in the wrong side. The GPS tells me to go in the wrong side of the parking lot. And so I'm like, this didn't seem right. So I stop there and I walk back through there, and they're like, well, did you check in with the security gate? Well, the security gate ends up being, 4/10 of a mile back on the other side. So anyway, I have to go walk back to my truck, and then, because I wouldn't buy the security gate because I was so close at this point. So can I check in here, just pull in the other side? She said, I really need to see the truck. So I was like, all right, fine. So I ended up, run back over there, walking almost a mile to run this facility. Anyway, I guess it's my fault. I just didn't want to pull myself in the wrong direction and have them say, no, you have to back all the way out. Anyway, so I went through security, and they said, well, I understand that you're here for this load, but we didn't have a trail. They didn't have a trailer for you to load into at 12:01 when your appointment time was. So they'll load you up. So just, hang out. I go there. I get inside. They tell me to back into dock 48. They're not numbered by the time you get down to that number. So, and the numbers are between two docks. So the two docks are like this, and it said 48, or it said like 46 or whatever between them. So I was like, it makes sense that if you're backing in there for it to be over your left shoulder to see that number, but it's not written reverse. So I was like, maybe it shows up on the right-hand side. Maybe it shows up on the left. The left would make sense if you're looking at it, but if you're looking at it in your rearview mirror, it makes sense to be in the driver's side. So I was like, I don't know. There's no one around to ask. So anyway, I get, I back in, come to find out it's dock 49, but they're like, oh, it's fine. Anyway, so I back in there and I call the office and I say, hey, I tell them the situation. And they said, all right, well, hang out. We'll call Walmart and see what's going on. Call us back in 15 minutes. I call them back in 15 minutes. And they said, oh, we just still don't have an answer yet. I'll call you this time. I said, okay. And at this point, I look at the clock and I don't hear from them. So at this point, I call them back an hour later. And I said, still haven't heard from you. They have not come out to talk to me about this load or anything. So there is nothing for me to pick up. And they're like, okay, yeah, you've been there over an hour now. Our policy is an hour. So tell you what, I'm going to call Walmart, get them on the phone and stay on the hold. And I said, okay. She had me on hold for about 10 minutes. Then she accidentally disconnected me as she switched back over. So I called back and she said, yeah, sorry, disconnected, switched back over. She says, you don't need to leave the trailer there. They have plenty of trailers. So come on back. I'm like, okay. So at this point, it's tail end of, well, it's like 9-something a.m. She says, come on back. And so I said, okay. And at this point, I'm thinking to myself, awesome. I'll be able to pull my time. By the time I get back to Marten and do my post-trip and stuff like that, it won't even be noon. I'll be able to start at 10 p.m. again. I'm getting excited, because this night was okay. It was just me driving along and I had a smile on my face because it wasn't crazy. And, me having to wait at locations and come in later to begin with and that kind of stuff. So anyway, I leave. I get part of the way down the road and my phone rings. And I have my neck guard that you've seen me wear, my Bose Soundwear Companion. So it's one touch to answer the phone, and I answered it. And it's operations. Hey, Alan, are you still there? I'm like, no, I left a while back. And they said, yeah, we just got a call back from Walmart. They want you to leave the trailer over there. They would like you to leave that trailer. I'm like, well, I've already left. And they said, well, can you take it back? I'm like, okay. So at this point, I've already been caught in traffic because it was a collision on one of the roads. Okay, so I pull off on the next exit, turn around and go back through another 45 minutes of traffic. And I pull in, the security lady looks at me weird again. I go by and check in again and say, should I go to the same dock? And she verifies and says yes, because they just weren't. And they're like, well, if he's waiting, he's not a priority right now. And I'm like, I'm not waiting. And so they're just like, no, he's just going to drop the trailer and go. And they're like, that's fine. So I drop the trailer and then I turn around and leave. By the time I get back to Marten this time, because of the wait and because of all this extra stuff and because of the traffic and driving back, now I'm going through some lunch traffic. I end up getting back and it's like 12 something. And I ended up finishing up and I talked to them as I came in and I said, who would be a good person to talk to about trying to get on a 5-2 schedule? And they said the operations manager. And so I went and talked to him when I finished my shift. And he said that they recently, only a couple weeks ago, they discontinued the 5-2 schedule. They said, we're only going to do 5-2, 5-3 slip seats from now on. And I told him I was actually hired, but for a 5-2, but they had to just verify something on my 10-year work history. And then by the time I talked to him the next morning, that job was gone. He said, yeah, we discontinued it. in one morning. So that's probably the day. He said, yeah, we're just not doing that anymore. I said, well, I would really like to have that, because the idea of drifting back, I said, I don't even care if, you pay me the minimum amount, the same minimum, pay. I said, the big thing is, and slip seat's fine too. I said, it's not ideal, but it's fine. The big thing is I don't want to end up having to change my schedule every single week and drift back every 2 weeks. Start on Friday and end on Tuesday, start on Friday, end on Tuesday, start on Saturday, end on Wednesday, start on Saturday, end on Wednesday, start on Sunday, end on Thursday, start on Sunday, end on Thursday. This is the weeks, and it slowly drifts back every 2 weeks. So I would prefer to just have a regular schedule and stick to that. But he says, well, I'm going to ask if we can make you a 5-2, but I wouldn't hold your breath. I'm like, okay. And I said, yeah, I just really don't need those 3 days in a row off. And he says, well, there's nothing that keeps you from, you can come in and work if you want to work one of those days. And I said, I won't have the hours. And then he said, well, did anyone talk to you about managing your hours? And this is the thing, that in the paperwork, it says a few different places. It doesn't tell you how to manage your hours, but what it says is ask a mentor or ask another driver for tips on how to manage your hours. I've talked to a couple of drivers. I've talked to a few staff members. I've talked to a few people. So after talking to him, he asked me basically, has anyone talked to you about managing your hours? Every single person I have talked to about the hours has said, well, you don't have to do this. And Martin doesn't tell you to do this. And I'm not telling you to do this, but, which basically means whenever you hear that kind of stuff, it means I'm telling you that something that you can do that manipulates the system. So basically, what seems to be a routine policy is if people want to work 6 days, what they will do is when they arrive at a location to unload, or they're doing a pre-trip, maybe not pre-trip first thing in the morning because the DOT wants to see you do 15 minutes. But if you end up coupling or whatever else, as soon as you pull up there, you don't go into on-duty status. I mean, if you want to go into there for like 2 or 3 minutes while you enter the paperwork, but then you log off duty, save your hours. So when you go inside of a Walmart and you are assisting with the unload process, doing the stickers and doing all the stuff you do in there, helping them manage and verify everything, is all that stuff you are doing off duty if you want to save your hours, to have enough hours to do another day. I have a problem with this. And the reason why is because the rules were put into effect to prevent this kind of thing from happening. That's the reason why the FMCSA and the DOT have the rules that they have, and they're as strict as they are. Some of them I find to be very annoying. Like and I've talked about this in the past, some of the things are like, if I am on my way back, and like at one point I was coming back from Florida and I ran into traffic, and I was just like, am I really going to have to pull over and stop what I'm doing and sit there for 30 minutes to get back my last bit on my clock? And if I'm going to have to pull over on the side of the interstate, it's going to be unsafe to do that. But there's no other truck stops because Atlanta, at that point, I was close to it. There's no other truck stops except the exit at Boulder Crest where I was going back to. So I would have had to pull over to the side of the interstate and sit there twiddling my thumbs in traffic for 30 minutes while I waited to get my 30 hours back. That's a stupid rule. I wish that the rule was that if you are close to, or you and you're going to be going off the clock or off duty or whatever else, you can extend your clock like an extra hour or something like that if it means getting back. And as long as you have 11 hours on your drive, or you have the hours on your 11 hour, I would like to see you be able to just push it a little bit extra. So that way, if you were doing a straight 8 hours, you could go as much as 9 and then just not get back the rest of your hours if you're going to do that. But that's not one of the rules. One of the things that caught me in my first week on my first Friday with Martin was I had gotten caught in 4 hours of traffic. So my 6.5 hour clock, by the time I got to Niagara and I filled up, and dropped off and hooked up a new load and figured out their system and how I needed to do things on their security and everything like that, I had less than I had about an hour and a few minutes left on my clock. But it's about 2 hours to get back to Monroe. I ended up having to pull over and shut down for 10 hours, twiddling my thumbs. And the truck isn't set up for me. It doesn't have anything ready for me. So it was not going to be comfortable for me. I was not going to be able to rest very well. I just ended up sitting there, bug-eyed, frustrated, wasting time for that clock to reset so I could drive back 2 hours. And then I could start my Saturday. That was so annoying to me. But yet, telling me just go off duty and save my hours. So that way, instead of having 5 days of up to 14 hours, which is a 70-hour clock, instead of doing that, I would have maybe 11 and a half hours every single day, and I would save maybe about 2.5 hours. And so that way, over the course of 5 days, you're saving up 12 and a half hours, and that with whatever's left over on your clock, you end up having enough for a 14-hour day, especially if you log off. The problem is, if you do that, first of all, you're working, so it's not technically legal. Second of all, if you do that, then what you're doing is you're sacrificing your detention pay. You're sacrificing any pay that you have of while you're unloading and loading and that kind of stuff, because you get compensated for that. You're sacrificing that. Furthermore, you're rewarding the company, saying, "Oh yeah, you don't have to pay me that. I'll work an extra day for you." So the company will work you and send you out on additional loads on a 6th day, maybe 1 or 2 loads, or trips rather, and you're rewarding the company with you being able to do extra work that they don't while they don't compensate you for some of the hours you've worked. That doesn't work for me. When you work it, you deserve to be compensated for it. So it's a choice you have, I guess, and that's not a choice that I'm interested in making. So when they tell you, has someone talked to you about how to save your hours? The answer is yes, but it's not legit, in my opinion. Anyway, so the next day, and I don't know if this is just a Marten related thing where the drivers just do this, or if it's a general thing where, old school drivers are like, well, I still wish we could drive 18 hours. Believe me, I wish I could too. I wish I could drive more hours in a day. I wish that I didn't start to get into a situation where I am so nervous about my clock and having to pull over. Otherwise, I go to a violation. I could get up to $16,000 fine for violating my clock. I wish I wasn't in that position. But the schedulers, the planners, will put you in that position, because then you're like, man, this traffic is going so slow and there's no way for me to get back. And I don't want to just be like some people I've heard about where they end up getting to 13 hours and 55 minutes. And then they say, well, I'm close. I'm not going to pull over. And then what they do is they put themselves in a yard move, which means you can't go faster than 20 miles an hour. As long as you keep it under 20 miles an hour, you can still move. But they'll go into yard move, which doesn't count towards your driving. And then they'll sit there with their hazard lights on and drive down the shoulder. That's not legit. That's not good. Sit there and just drive down the shoulder, and then if you're close enough or whatever, I don't like that idea. Anyway, I don't know if other companies do this too, or if this is just a Marten exclusive. I can imagine other companies doing it though. So the next day, one of the next 2 days I can't remember, I was sent out on a load. They built in a backhaul. So after I finished everything, I dropped off and picked up another trailer and came back. That wasn't a big deal. But there was another one of these days where I got back and I had to wait until 9 a.m. and then I picked up a load. And it was during a work day. So I came back and I was leaving with the trailer, and I saw in advance there was a Walmart fleet driver in front of me, a few places in front of me, not even a 1/10 of a mile. And I was like, I just felt it in my gut, even though I was 40 miles out. I felt it in my gut. This guy was going to the same place as me. I just knew it. And I tried everything I could to pass him. And, because we were going to be on state highways, U.S. and state highways for a while. And he was just cruising along nice and slow. And I was trying, but it just going uphill when you end up having 40,000 pounds of weight, I just could not push it fast enough to go uphill. And then by the time I got going downhill again, he was going downhill too. And I just could not pass him for the life of me. Sure as the world, he made the same turn that I did. And then he made the next turn. And I was like, I know it. Anyway, we get to this Walmart. He backs in. I am waiting because there's 3 docks on the grocery side. 2 of them are occupied by trailers. And then he pulls up into the other one. The Walmart employee that works there, he is a senior citizen that is doing everything slow. He's apparently in charge of unloading that division, the Walmart fleet driver. And this guy is just happy and jolly. He's greeting everybody as they come in. He's stopping to talk to them for a second. You doing all right today? Did you get into work safe? You okay? You well rested? Awesome. Well, great. I got to do this. And he is walking with a slight wobble, and he gets down there to break the seal, and he is just slow to get down there. And once he gets down there, he's reaching down there to break the seal with one hand and pull the thing up. And it's like, guys, come on. Finally, he has to find the hand truck, and he is just slow. He wheels the thing over there and just picks up one, and he's go digging around for the sticker, looking at it. And I'm just like, this guy is going to take forever. And then I find out there's 20 pallets to unload. And I'm standing there watching and keeping a neutral face, saying, keep a neutral face. And he just kind of glanced over and says, you driving that reefer out there? I'm like, yep. He's like, I'll come up and pound on your window when I'm done here. It'll take me a while, maybe 45 minutes to get this guy unloaded. And I'm thinking to myself, there's no way in the world you're going to be able to do two minutes per pallet and finish this thing in 45 minutes. But he's basically telling me he doesn't want me there watching him because he knows he's, I guess, slow. So I'm like, fine. So I go back out to the truck. And at this point, all week, I have not been able to pull my schedule back. I have not been able to. So anyway, this is my Thursday, by the way. So I get as much of this, I go out there and I'm just sitting there like this, watching my clock go down. And this is my first stop. Then I see a Walmart fleet driver pull up bobtail, and he happens to pull out one of the empties. I pull myself into that spot. I run inside and I say, hey, I'm ready to go frozen and dairy. And they're like, okay. And they are dragging their feet again. And the other guy is still unloading that other trailer, the senior citizen. And so the guy comes over and he helps me with frozen and dairy, and one of the pallets had collapsed. It was another pallet that was like a couple of days earlier that had also collapsed for some reason. And it's not that I'm driving reckless or anything like that. I don't. I learned one thing I learned on a flatbed is to take all your turns slow, and once you get on a straightaway, you can accelerate and speed up, and that's when you're gonna it's point and squirt is what they call it in racing. Take your turns slow, and then when you get on a straight line, you can get going and then slow down in advance, and then make your turns. Anyway, so anyway, this guy, and one of the pallets had collapsed, and it was because it was loaded up the way it was loaded up. Anyway, it collapsed. So they had to completely unload the entire pallet and restack things. In the meantime, I'm watching my clock go down. I get out of there finally, and the other guy, by the time we get done with me, the other guy had just left because and he looks over at me and he says, this is the slowest in my years of driving I've ever been off unloaded. And I'm like, yep. He's like, this is the slowest. And so I heard him on his phone at one point as the guy was wheeling stuff around. He's like, yeah, this guy isn't cutting it. We got to get somebody else in here. This is just taking forever. And I was like, I feel bad for the guy, but at the same time, drivers have clocks and we have schedules we have to do. Anyway, they got me done. I went to one of the other Walmarts that I did the free frozen and dairy for a couple of days earlier. They were a little more on the ball. They were still slow. One of the things about the first time I was there is at one of these Walmarts is there was this lady who insisted on putting her thermometer in every single pallet when she pulled it off. That was the one at one of these Walmarts earlier. So she just sat there and watched it as it was going down. And I'm like, waiting 3 minutes until she's finally like, okay, now it seems to have dropped. So we're good on this temperature. So the guy was able to pull it out, and then she puts it in another one and watches it. And I'm like, you don't have to check every single one of these pallets, lady. But she wanted to. And so when I found out I was going back to that Walmart, I was like, man, Anyway, luckily she wasn't there, and it was somebody else who still was checking some stuff, but not a big deal. So anyway, ended up getting back, and this time it was, by the time I got done with the day, it was a 13-hour and change day. So I started on, at the very minimum, I was able to pull myself back and start at 10. Not at 9, but I was able to start at 10. So I was like, all right, at least that's good. So at this point, I was like itching to get going the next day. So I started my time at 10 p.m. on my Friday. And I wake up, this time I sleep all the way through. I don't wake up in the middle of the night or middle of the day and check my time. This time I just sleep, and then my alarm goes off, and I'm like, I wonder what the job is going to be. It ends up being that I started, I think, at like 10:23. It's got to be, out of there by 11:23. It was a drive to, I think, Greenville, South Carolina, another one in Greenville, South Carolina, then Travelers Rest, South Carolina. Now, the important thing to know here is that I slept all the way through until I woke up. The problem is it's spring break week, and there was a lot of activity going on. So I was only able to sleep about 3 hours. I wasn't able to sleep a full 6. So I was mistaken if I said that, because I forgot which day it was. I'm tired now. And so I only had like 3 hours of sleep. And I laid in bed. I just was not able to get back to sleep. So when I went in for my, and got that load, and I told him, I said, just so you know, I'm really tired right now. I should be fine to do this. I'm not like tired and wobbly. I don't feel as rested as I could. So normally when I'm like this, I'm good for like 10, 12 hours. I don't know I'm good for a second run. And they said, she's like, all right, well, let us know. And at this point, I'm like, you know what? If I get overly tired, I know South Carolina very well. At least I know that there's a lot of stops over there that along the way. I can stop and I can take a nap someplace. So I know this, especially on the way back, because by then there's rest areas and stuff. There's places to stop, and trucks leave. And that's one of the interesting things about driving OTR versus driving on a dedicated run. It's a different world. I pass by these rest areas, and I always look to see if there's available parking spaces. It's still the gut instinct I have of seeing what would have happened if I would have pulled off there. Would there be a parking space? Because sometimes I would drive by it saying, I'm not going to waste my time because I'm not ready for a load securement check just yet. Now I don't want to pull off there. And then I would look at it and say, there was a parking space there. Anyway. But now I just drive by him and I look at him and I say, man, wasn't that long ago that I was doing OTR, and that was a very big deal, is to find a parking space. And, the trucks would be blocking up the way that you would pull into those. And then they're stopped there for, 10 hours. So you can't even pull into a spot because there's a truck that, you need to have this much room in order to pull into one of the angled parking spots. But there's a truck here, so you can't get in there enough to do it. So it's like, you can't even fill in one of those spaces until the truck moves. Totally different world. Anyway, so this is my Friday. I went up to Greenville, and the second stop, guess what? Neighborhood market. Well, at this point, I've already talked to the schedulers. I've talked to the people in the office. I've said, I'm going to be coming in at 10 p.m. They gave me a job that had to be out of there by 10:23. So it's like, I have to be out of there by 10:23. Someone else would too. So I was like, it's not like I can push it back and try to go back to sleep and say, start at noon or whatever. Guess what? Greenville, South Carolina, I did my first place. She was a little on the slow side, but she was fine. And I got to that neighborhood market almost 2 hours ahead of time. It was like 2:15 or something like that when I got there. So I pull over and I decide I'm going to go through the manual, and I start looking at different things, trying different lights and certain buttons and see what things do, and reading what things do in the manual and stuff. I'd done this before, but I went a little deeper today. And, learning how to do different things on the truck and what certain things do and if there's any tweaks. Because one of the other tricks that I learned, I think I mentioned this in the last one, is that if you have your accelerator down, it's going to govern at 65. But if you take your foot off the accelerator and go pop real quickly, or just go pop, and then put down the gas again, the accelerator again, it will get up to about 67 and hold that as a passing thing. So I was wondering if there was any tricks that might be in the manual that would help me out. Anyway, finally I unloaded at 4 a.m. Then I got to the next place. And I tell you, there is nothing that drains the energy out of me more than just sitting there not doing anything. And that is just a point of frustration. And if I would have told the office that, why in the world should I come? Why do we have to start so much at this time? If it's going to, if I can't even drop off. And in the meantime, the tablet pops up, detained. What kept you so long? Why were you detained? I'm like, well, the previous customer. Anyway, I did my final drop. And as I'm driving back, I had to fuel up because it was my last day. And at this point, I'm looking at this thinking to myself, I know what they're going to do. They're going to give me one of these frozen and dairy runs. I'm not going to have enough hours to do it. Plus, I'm tired. And at this point, I was really not focusing well. I had about 55 miles to go after that. And I was going to be able to safely make it back. But I knew that my brain was just starting to get a little on that tired place. Not hazy, not like wobbly. That wouldn't be good. I would go ahead and stop there and taking a nap if I needed to, even though it would not be good. It would not be good to rest and take a nap because it wouldn't be comfortable. I wouldn't be well rested or anything like that. But if I was so tired that I needed to take a nap, I would. It wouldn't last. I would not be able to nap, very long. It would probably only be like 20 minutes, but that'd be enough to reset me to get back there safely. Anyway, I call the office and I tell them, I say, hey, I'm not going to be able to take another load. And he says, but we already have you one scheduled. And I'm like, well, what is it? He says, it's a short one. It's only 40 miles. And I'm like, what is it? Is it a drop and hook? He says, no, it's 2 stops. It's frozen dairy. And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, so that means I can't drop off until 9. One of the other things that I've noticed is that some of the guys will tell you it's only 40 miles, but they only are counting the loaded miles. So if it's, let's say 10 miles to get to the first place and 30 miles to the next place, then you still have 20 or 30 miles to get back to the DC. Some of them will tell you the total amount. It will tell you that it's not 40 miles, it's 70 miles. Some of them will say, no, it's only 40 miles because all they care about you doing is doing the run. After that, getting back and stuff like that within your hours, that's on you. They just want you to do the run. It depends on who you're talking to. Anyway, I said, yeah, I don't think I'm going to have the hours to do that. He says, what time did you come in? And I said 9. He says, oh yeah, you won't be able to, because he wouldn't be able to dispatch it. And then by the time I did that, I was like, yeah, I wouldn't be able to get out of there. Well, anyway, by the time I got through the traffic and stuff, it was, and by the time I dropped off, did my post trip and did my DVIR on the trailer and stuff like that, it was almost 9:30. So I came in there and there was no way in the world I was going to be able to do another load in like an hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever it was that I had left on the clock. So at this point, I just said, okay, well, I'll see you at 9 p.m. on Saturday. He's like, no, I got you down. So I went ahead and left. I want to see how it goes. If they can figure me out, because I need to start at 9 or 10. I want to drive in an area of no traffic. If they're not going to give me a 5-2 schedule, and they're not going to give me my own truck, they're not going to give me that guaranteed pay or whatever else, I at least want to start when I want to start. If they're going to start pushing me back, well, can't you start at 1 or 2 and then be sitting there in rush hour traffic while they send me to do one of these, just wait and whatever else? It's just like, I gotta really see what's going on. Because if it's every single day, if it's a stress for me to try to get back because they've overscheduled me, or they sit there and burn up my time saying, can't release the job to you yet, because my clock, has a certain amount of time on it left. And they're just like, yeah, don't worry about it. Just, I can't release it to you because we can't drop off too early. If they start pushing me into the point where I can't get back within my hours, because they have screwed up in my planning, I can't imagine myself staying there very long. As much as I like some things about Marten, there's some things I'm just not sure about. I'm not sure about their scheduling and their planning. The fact that they cannot seem to get me on regular Walmarts, or you know what? Send me 350 miles away like they did last Monday. Send me to Jasper, send me to Dalton, send me to Chattanooga, and then send me back, and then send me to those places and let me do multiple stops and just do that. And that's fine. I can get back. I can do all of those. I can be at a neighborhood market and just have to wait 15 minutes or whatever before they open. That's fine. But don't give it to me as a first or second stop when you tell me I have to leave at 9, because then I'm going to be sitting around there for almost 2 hours. They got to figure out my schedule. I want to start, because that was the deal. When I originally said I'd like to start at he said that we have a 4 p.m. and an 11 p.m. I said, let me start at 11. And they're like, well, when time do you want to start? I said, start me at 10. And I'm like, great. And then when I pushed that back to 9, they're like, yeah, it's fine. They're just not scheduling. They're not planning for me correctly. I don't know why. Why is it that there's always a Sam's Club or a neighborhood market that's going to require me to wait? And I can't even push back my time. Like sometimes I can, but I can't do it consistently. So it's not fair to me. Anyway, we'll see how this week goes. I don't like running down my clock. I would not be against working a 6-day and doing a load or two, but I don't want to end up going off the clock, going off duty in order to work like an 80-hour week for that. If you want me to come in for a 6-day, give me 12-hour days. Give me 11 or 12-hour days every single day. And that way I have the hours legitimately. And sure, I'll come in for a 6-day. That's no problem. But don't expect me to work and not be on the clock. So anyway, we'll see how it goes this week. But I tell you, my first run's out. The biggest thing I'm looking at is, am I going to a neighborhood market? Because if I am, I can't drop off before, or a Sam's Club, I can't drop off before 4 a.m. Am I going to get to one before 4 a.m. and have to wait too long? If so, can I push my start time back? Which I hate doing, because then it pushes me to the point where I don't get a back haul that's doing something like, going and taking a full trailer to a Walmart, picking up an empty, and then going to another place and trading that empty for a full and then coming back. Instead, it goes to a frozen and dairy run, which means sitting around and fighting for space in the dock and dealing with these slow Walmarts. And then I'm sitting there like, looking at the clock like, come on, I gotta go. Anyway, we'll see how it goes this week. Tonight, I'm supposed to start at 9 p.m. Or when I go back to work, rather, I'm supposed to be going back at 9 p.m. So we'll see how it goes. Thanks for watching.